All right, so I'm going to solve these two equations by substitution. I have y equals 2x plus 3 and y equals negative x. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute y equals negative x. So I'm going to substitute right here, this into my expression over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I take negative x and I'm going to substitute that in for my y value. So I've now substituted negative x in for my y value. Alright, so that equals 2x plus 3. My pen's dying, so I'm just going to stop for a second. Alright, I'm back. 2x plus 3. Just need to reconnect it. Just give me a second. Okay, 2x plus 3. Much better. So the next thing I do is I expand my x out of its brackets. So I'm going to look at negative x, and I'm going to expand it out of these brackets right here, and there's really nothing I need to do. I just need to rewrite it out of the brackets. So that's just negative x equals 2x plus 3. I'm now going to subtract 2x from this side, and I'm also going to subtract 2x from this side. Once I've done that, I get negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3x equals 3, because these are cancelled out. Next, I divide by 3, divide by 3. To get that, so I'll just kind of come over here, and I get that x equals, and if I look at what is 3 divided by negative 3, what I end up getting here is I get negative 1. So now I'm going to take my negative 1 and substitute it back into any or either one of the two equations. So it doesn't matter which one you pick. I'll just, for the sake of just practice, I'll substitute it into this equation here. So I'm going to substitute it back into this equation. So I write my equation as y equals 2 bracket negative 1, which is what my x equaled from above. So that's where I got that. I substitute that right in there. Plus 3. What's 2 times negative 1? That's negative 2 plus 3. What's negative 2 plus 3? That equals 1. So my final answer here is I take my negative 1 I found for x, and I put that down from my first point, because that's my x value of negative 1. And then I take my y value of positive 1, and I put it in right here. And my solution is 1, 1. And that's our solution to those two linear functions. We'll try another one that's a little bit trickier. It's a little bit harder, a little bit more involved. So this one is, we're going to solve by substitution again. So I have one equation, or one equation that is x plus 2y equals 1. And another expression that is 3x plus y equals 13. So this one's a little bit more complicated. Firstly, I've got more pronumerals. So I have a pronumeral in front of x, I have a constant in front of x, and a constant in front of y, and it's not easy or simple to kind of quickly substitute in. So I'm going to use, I'll just kind of label these a and b. I'm going to isolate for equation A. So the first thing I'll do is isolate. So if I look at x plus 2y equals 1, I want to get x by itself. So I'll just subtract 2y, and I'll subtract 2y from that side too. And I get x equals 1 minus 2y. And the first step I did there was I was isolating. So I may not have said that before in the last one, but I just thought I'd let you know that this is isolating. Isolate one variable. Oops, I'm just clicking on tools here because I'm so close to the edge. Variable. There we go. So I'm isolating one variable. So now we have x that's isolated. Now I can substitute. So I'm going to take that value for x, and I'm going to substitute it into b. So I'm going to take this value for x, so I'm going to take the value we just found for x and substitute it into b. So I take b and I write it. So we have 3 bracket 1 minus 2y plus y equals 13. So you see what I've done here is I've taken my original equation for b. For the x value, I substituted in what I found x to be in my previous isolate. So I've now substituted for the first time. I now need to expand my brackets. So I need to expand 3 by multiplying 3 by 1 and multiplying 3 by negative 2y. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times negative 2y is negative 6y plus y equals 13. Okay. So the next thing I'll do is let's move 3 over. So I'll subtract 3 and I'll subtract 3. And then that turns out into a 10. I don't know if I'll be able to write here at the bottom. Yeah, I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to continue up way over here. So there's my equal sign. So if I first look at what's 13 minus 3, and that's going to equal 10. The next thing I'll look at is what is 3 minus 3 is 0. And then what is left, or what remains, is negative 6y plus y. So I can now collect my like terms, and these two terms are like, so I can kind of do something about that. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5, and y equals, that's the messiest equals ever, but I'll just take a deep breath. Now I need to isolate, so I divide by 5. And I divide by negative 5. These two negative 5's cancel out, so I'm left with y equals negative 2. What's 10 divided by negative 5? It's negative 2. So I've now found my value for y. I can now take my value for y. There's my value for y. And I can substitute it into a or b. It doesn't matter which one you do. Either one will render the correct answer. I'm usually picking the easiest one, or kind of visually inspecting. I'm just going to go and substitute back into a. So I write it out as, so I'm now going to substitute again. So I have x plus 2y, but I now know what y is, so I can write it in as negative 2 equals 1. And I got that value for y from right here, so I just substituted it into this equation right here. I plugged my value for y right in there. So next, I know that 2 times negative 2 is negative 4 equals 1. The next thing I need to do is I need to add 4 to this side. I'll add, oh boy, really close to the edge here. I'll just try to squeeze it in, add 4 to this side, and I get my final answer of x equals 5. So these two cancel out, and 1 plus 4 is 5. So my answer I get is x equals 5. I've kind of boxed myself into a corner here, and I've run out of room. So I have my two values. Here's my x value right here. My pen just will not write near this edge here. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I can write my final answer over here. My final answer is 5, I can't write, there we go, comma, negative 2 is my final answer. I'm sorry I've written it over there, but there's my final answer. And that's my solution to this by substitution.